Let's go. All right, so welcome to the channel. Yes, okay. Seeing a couple people come in. Hi, Iberia. Excited about this? Yeah, me too. This is my very first time to use the live stream feature on YouTube because I normally do these things on Instagram, but this is just a better way to kind of like get people involved and in a kind of like in a room together because I find Instagram can be a little cumbersome when there's more than two people. So yeah. So what I'm going to do today first is I'm going to invite a couple of my friends who you've seen me kind of like banter with on Instagram to talk about this topic of which is very controversial of how to or why it doesn't serve women to be girlfriends. And we're going to get some people angry at us, but we're actually speaking a lot of truth into this idea. So it's not just an idea that the three of us had. It's really something that we believe is going to help more and more men and women the more we receive this as not just an idea, but actually a really valuable um, way of being human. So I'm going to bring some of my friends on. I'm going to bring Carla Dobbs and Leah Vermont. So you've seen them with me on Instagram, or you've seen their posts as well because I share their material. But we're going to be together, the three of us today, to talk about this. Hey, Julia. Okay, so hello, loves. Hi, Leah. Hi, Carla.
Hello, ladies.
Okay. Amazing. Amazing. This is awesome. So, thank you, ladies, for accepting the invite to do this with me. I said last night on a few hours ago on Instagram that we're kind of like putting our heads on the chopping block here for in front of modern women, when we come out with this idea of like not being a girlfriend. But before we do anything, maybe ladies, you can just like introduce yourselves, tell us where you are, what you are, and why, in a short sentence, you believe that this idea is useful. Okay, so maybe we'll start with Carla.
Hi,
Hi.
everyone. I'm Carla. I'm at Instagram at Don't Become Roommates 1989. Martine and I have talked about this before. It seems like Gen X is becoming kind of the unofficial new relationship coaches in the new world here. It seems like maybe the way we grew up has something of value that needs to be a bit more reclaimed. I'm 55 years old. I'm definitely older, but my oldest child is 30. So I have Gen Zers who've dealt with dating, and my oldest son is married. We have a grandchild, but I'm personally the mom of 11. Um,
Right.
when I was dating my husband in the 80s, just thinking about what you've talked about, Martine, like it was a time that was before purity culture really hit, but it
Yeah.
was also a time before hookup culture really hit. And I like to think in a way, because Jenny at Take the Love Pill talks about this too, right?
Mm.
I like to think in a way we were sort of the last people to kind of hit that sweet spot in before dating, which I don't think meant back in the 80s what it means now.
No,
We're,
it has
we're
a
going to
different
talk
meaning
about
now.
that,
We are.
right?
We
Um,
are.
what it meant. Also, living together was not a thing in the 80s for people my age. Maybe there were some way older people who did it after a failed marriage or a widower
Mm,
situation, but it was something that like nobody really talked about. You didn't
yeah.
go to their houses on holidays.
You
This
never
was
heard
just
of the people living together. It was like, shh.
right. It was
Like,
their friend. Like it was
yeah.
the adults around you were very careful about that. And you know, by I would say that started changing about 2000, because again, I met my husband in 1985. I was 18 years old. He was 19, 20, somewhere around there. We were both in college. And we then knew we were both going on to graduate school. We were going to go to law school together, right? And we had Zippo money, nothing, nada, and yet. We
Mm,
were poor as church mice. Um, and I remembered when we were talking about, we actually were engaged our last year of college, our first year of law school. Don't really encourage such long engagements, but you
yeah,
got
we'll
to do
talk
what you
about
got to
that.
do. You
Yeah,
got to do
yeah,
what
because
you
it was,
got to do.
and things were different back then. Let's be
Different
honest.
bat.
They were
We were
different
not.
back then.
We were both living in our parents' homes,
Exactly.
commuting to school every day,
Exactly.
um, and I had a ring and a date. It was 2 years
Yes.
almost, but I had a ring and a date, and
You were claimed.
we were
Yeah.
fully claimed to each other and going to school together. And I remember complaining about like this was going to cost a lot of money for both of us to finish the last 2 years of school. And I remember one girl asked me, who was a little older than me, I was actually the youngest person actually attending my law school. Everybody was
Mm,
older than me. Because I skipped a couple grades and did some other weird stuff. So I was younger than everyone. And one older gal goes to me, well, why don't you just live together then so your dad will pay your tuition? And I
mm.
looked at her and I said, number one, he would never ask me to live with him. He would know better
Exactly.
than that.
Exactly.
It never was even in the conversation. It was, are we going to get married? Or are we really going to not get married? Maybe put that aside, try to do. That was the only discussion. There was none of that live together discussion. I said,
Right.
number two, if you think we did and my dad was going to pay for it, you've got
No.
something else coming.
Exactly. I
that that
love that.
was not a conversation. So that just shows you kind of how where I was very different.
Mhm.
um a nephew of mine just got engaged, announced it on Facebook and Instagram today. Lovely guy, 29 years old, lovely gal. They've been living together for almost the last 2 years, and we're so happy that she's a lovely gal. We're happy they're getting married. But like, here's the problem:
Mm.
it's not because they live together they're getting married. It's they're in the minority. They were
Yep.
lucky enough to survive living together
Mm-mm.
to get officially engaged and get married. Because if the
Mm.
DMs I see, and you guys see more than me, are any indication, that is the exception rather than the rule.
Yes. Yes, yes. And we're going to dig into that, like how culture has programmed us to believe we shouldn't get married,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Awesome. Leia, like, like I'm so excited that you're here because you are in this generation. But you're
Yes.
a unicorn in this generation because Leia, ladies, I know like I've shared a lot of her stuff and I know like she's one of these few women in this generation of young people that actually is she's kind of like thinking a little bit like how Carla and I think about this whole thing. So Leia, like welcome. So happy and you're so gorgeous tonight.
Thank
Like
you.
what? Beautiful. Love, tell us a little bit about yourself, like what you do. I know like you and I were both in the mentorship space, but maybe you can tell everybody what you do and what brought you kind of like into this realm of interest as well.
Yes. So hello, I'm Leah Vermont, as many people know me,
Yes.
but my actual name is Leah Wardlaw. My middle name is
Oh,
Vermont, and I kind of use it as like It's like
I
a
like
fun,
it.
cute name. I
Yeah.
really like it.
Yeah, yeah.
So what do I do? I think that's kind of an interesting question because I really find myself just being a like passionate student of life. And that's very
Mm.
much so what led me into this space because I studied my parents, I studied the relationships around me. I went to that private Christian school and observed the familial dynamics of my classmates and, the contrast between mine and theirs and what I felt like worked and experienced purity culture and
Mm.
grew up with all of these women that were deep in the trenches of feminism. And, I went through that phase and I came out of it. And throughout all of that time, the thing that has remained consistent at my core is that I love to learn. And so
Mm. Yeah, you do.
if I find something interesting, I want to like devour it and like metabolize it into
Mm.
every aspect of really literally my body. Like it's a beautiful experience to not only learn but to like really feel what it is that you're learning and observe it and have
Mm.
experience with it. And I've been really, I would say, blessed to have that like observational perspective
You
on it.
do.
It's
Yeah.
very, it's a necessity for me to
Yeah.
function because like
Mm.
for me, I don't
Yeah.
understand. I don't understand
It's
these
not
like
like head knowledge. It's like a student being like a student of life is like marinating in it. You
yeah,
know, like
it is. I would call it like I would call it like unionizing with what you know, like literally
yeah.
enter you and transform you and expand you. And it's a very beautiful, like, learning to me is a spiritual practice on its own.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
I care deeply about relationships. I honor and appreciate both my parents for the incredible contributions that each of them made. Um,
Mm.
and I found them to be incredible spiritual teachers. And for me, I know that marriage represents this like beautiful container for spiritual expansion, for deeper inner awareness, for deeper
Yes.
outer awareness.
Yes.
Um, because like our culture is so self-referencing, and I think that there's definitely
Mm.
a place for that. But the self-referencing only works well, I believe, in relationship and in community with others.
Yes.
Like in the service of whom are you
Mm.
self-referencing for? So
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
just find that so beautiful. And
It
so
is.
I'm a student of life,
Yeah.
and as my job, I'm a investigator.
I
Which
love it.
I find it's like, everything. It's this process of learning and integrating information, regardless of what it is that I'm doing, according to my title. If that makes
Yeah, like the doing doesn't make us like less feminine than what we already have embodied and who we are. I think that
right.
I talked about that yesterday. Like, a lot of women get caught up in the fact that, oh, like I have to have a job right now because I'm
Right.
single, and then they get in their head. So, oh no, all of these other women are telling me like I'm not being feminine. I'm like, there's a certain level of maturity that one gets to have, like when they can hold a job and yet still like you like be fully in that like feminine embodiment. It's very mature, and that's why I call her a unicorn among women. This beautiful woman
Well,
here. Oh,
we've all talked about, we all mentioned, we've come out of that more feminist place by
Mm,
what the
yes.
culture means as feminism, right? We've
Yes,
all
yes.
referenced that in our work, that that was a thing, and Leah's probably done the best moving on the quickest
Yeah,
from
yeah. We don't
that.
have to get caught up in like the competition with men. Absolutely not. Okay, ladies, I see some people in the chat. So hello, Julia. Hi. Iberia, Simangele. Okay, ladies, let's get right to the questions. So what do we really mean by the word girlfriend, right? Girlfriend, because I think I think we have to create some context here around what we mean by that, by where the culture is now. So I'm just going to introduce a little fact here so that you ladies can also like chime into the conversation. So the word girlfriend historically began in 1922 as a label for what in that context was a female friend, as opposed to like a platonic male friend. However, it only started to become connoted with a man's sweetheart, which is like, like what you would call like the woman that you were interested in or you would be the beau of around the 1930s. Interesting, right? Very interesting. And so, what do you make of that? Like when and again, dating and the whole like romance situation is very nuanced, but I found that fact to be really interesting that there was actually a term created to label but not institutionalize
Mm-hmm.
this status that somehow came to evolve, from sweetheart to she's just this friend that I have who's a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, it's interesting. So look, number one, we're having this live stream in the 100-year anniversary of the word girlfriend,
right? Where
right?
the word was coined,
So it's
yeah,
been a
in America.
century. Number two, the rise of the automobile
Ah,
in the 20s and in the 30s, where you didn't have to necessarily go to your sweetheart's family to sit in the living room or go
uh-huh.
to a public place. There was a semi-private place that you could interact with each other, an automobile,
Mm.
rise of
Is that where
movie
parking came
theaters.
from? Right?
Pardon?
That the term parking, like in the 80s, remember
Parking,
like parking?
yes.
Oh my gosh, you're
Oh,
right.
So I was thinking
Do any
about
of you
what
know what
you
parking? Leia, do you know what parking is? Are you old old like us? She's very young. She's
I'm
like half our
assuming
age.
I'm assuming you mean like actually parking, but I'm coming into an awareness I'm probably very far off.
Oh, in the
it's
80s, parking meant like making out in the car
Oh,
yes.
because
okay.
it was the
Yeah,
only
I
place
did
that you
not know
could be
that.
private.
So you're not at his house, you're not at her house, you're too young to
Yeah.
have your own place. So
Yeah.
the car was the space. Think also what started in the 20s and 30s. Movies, another semi-private place. You could get
Mm,
together with a beau, a sweetheart,
that
and
is
have a
true.
modicum of privacy that was never the case in
It was
previous
never
centuries.
available before. Yes.
No.
Yes.
So I think the culture was struggling with these new semi private spaces,
Mm.
this new quality of people who weren't necessarily looking to get married and work on the farm at age 21, but wanted companionship and that, like you said, I love that word, sweetheart experience
Mhm.
without pledging they were getting married in X amount of time.
Exactly, exactly. There was
Okay.
no commitment, but there
None.
was still, and I want Leah to speak into this because she has like the psychology and the biology aspects of it. But you're exchanging privileges and kind of like emotions and energetics, right, Leah? Can you speak a
Yeah.
little bit to that, Leah, about how girlfriends essentially kind of like demonetize themselves when they do this?
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
do, right? They devalue, right?
Absolutely. So there's obviously our intrinsic value, but I want to speak
Mhm.
to the experience of how being a girlfriend feels in your body, because there's
Yes.
a very big difference between the labels and the theories that we create around experiences that we have in our bodies and the truth of them. So, like you
Yes.
said, girlfriend is a new term. Like, this is not uh, something that we've integrated within our biology or anything, our
It's
spirituality,
not in our DNA, just
at
like
all.
mating is, right?
At all. But because we have such a deep attachment, and I use that word deliberately,
Mm.
towards theory and intellect and like concepts and really the way I talk about it is there's levels of materialization. So the
Mhm.
body is the original source of the information that we then give words to, that we then give theory
Yes.
to, and they materialize through our actions. But because we're so disconnected from our bodies, we believe that the concepts, like we're clumping together these sensations, these feelings, these all this stuff, and we're making it mean something, and we're believing that
Mm.
because there's words and theories and intelligences that are coming together and agreeing on it, that that's truth. And like the problem with that is that it completely disregards how it's showing up like here,
Yes.
you know?
Mhm.
So the question is like, it's not for me a question of like, do you become less or more valuable in
Mhm.
regards to what you do? It is literally, you need to like ask yourself, how am I feeling when I do this? How am I
Yes.
showing
Mm.
up because of how I'm feeling? How is that?
Mhm.
How is the way that I'm feeling affecting my behavior? And is that behavior indicative of someone that values themselves?
Mm. Yes.
Because how you value yourself shows everyone else how to treat you. So if you're like out
Exactly.
there for everybody,
Available.
available, it's like there's a certain like it's your experience of your body when you're getting to know someone is very
Mm.
important. And it's
Yeah.
important that it is contained so that you can
Mm.
turn inwards whenever you need to and sort of ask yourself, how am I feeling? How is this showing up for me? What is my intuition telling me? Like checking in with God, keeping that line of communication
C-
clean.
exactly.
And
Because yeah.
I was just talking to another gentleman in the masculine space on Instagram today
Mm.
about does the fact taking another jump past our 20s and the 20s and the 30s and the 40s and seeing how that worked and going to the 60s and the 70s and past to where we are now, does the fact that so many women are on hormonal birth control affect the experience they're having in their body with the men that they are looking at, dealing with, and who they even might be in a certain level of relationship with? How can that not affect how we're all experiencing? Because we as women are experiencing then not the natural hormones women dealt with for 3,000 years.
Right.
You're dealing with a different hormonal
Mm.
and
Yeah.
artificial,
Yeah.
long, prolonged hormonal state. And you're also giving off, I've read the studies on this, you're giving off different pheromones and different signals
Mhm.
to the men who are around you. And how can
Yeah.
that not affect what we're going through as a culture when that is the default state of a woman in her fertile years right
Mm.
now in the Western world, is to be made hormonally not fertile
Yeah.
Right.
by what we're
Yeah.
going
Right.
through. So how can you have that same experience in your body when you're not experiencing the way women have for X
Yeah.
thousand years? That becomes problematic, um, I think, and is a smaller part. It's a smaller part of what we're talking about, but it's not an unimportant one.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. Not at
Yeah.
all. Yeah.
I think the bigger thing is the principle of it. Like, what does
Mm.
it say about us that we refuse really to submit to our biology? You know,
Yes.
and what does
Mhm.
that mean? Because again, it goes back to this idea that we believe in our concepts. We believe in the stories
Yeah.
we make about things.
We allow the concepts to condition us versus,
Exactly.
kind of like we're inborn with certain things, certain
Mhm.
qualities that make us male and female, right? And we don't know those things because we're literally born into society where these ideas have been infiltrating. Like Carla said, there's the juxtapose of like the Industrial Revolution, where in my opinion, what happened in the Industrial Revolution was more women, because jobs opened up for women like in the 1890s. They
Yeah.
would go to the cities. Naturally, men would have more mate selection variation. I mean, I'm talking like in these kind of like more like terms in psychology, but basically that's what that did. But that did not diminish how we are, like at our core as men and women. When we see a beautiful woman
Yes.
and we see like a variance of them, like in big cities, what's a man going to do? Right. Well, in a tribe, maybe when we were more like rural and we didn't have like these big cities where both men and women would flock to, then we would see kind of like those natural dynamics more at play. But when you're in a manufactured like city and urban environment, and then there are women opening, before the 1890s, men couldn't see women in private unless they were prostitutes,
Hmm.
right? The context was, if you're going to be alone with a woman, either you're about to marry her or there's something that the two of you are doing that is cognizant of our biology of coming together, but it's in secret because there's no, like Leah was saying, there was no label yet to attach to, no
Yes.
concept to kind of like anchor your human inclinations to, that would keep like, oh, but we're just doing it, but we're not like getting married, even though we're doing things that only married people do. you
Right.
know so it kind of evolved like from there. And I'm just sharing some of the, so bear with me. I'm not like an expert YouTuber. I'm just like putting the comments that people are saying in the comment section about what they're getting from our conversation. So Angel Brittany says, society these days can be obsessed with labels, realizing the title of being girlfriend can at any time have an end. Right.
Yes.
And so like when you think about it that way, like we actually don't, that isn't even like a legit label. You're still single if you, even if you are a sweetheart, even if you are a girlfriend, because there's no binding covenant
Right.
between the two of you. So Julia says, I find the word girlfriend devaluing because girlfriends are associated with giving the boyfriend access to their body,
Yeah.
which is saved for marriage. So, and Iberia says, I agree. If he isn't willing to wait for you in that manner, then he's not, like, in her opinion, like he is devaluing himself as
Yeah.
well. So interesting comments from everyone. Ladies, like, what do you have to? How do
Actually,
you say?
I actually want to speak to that last comment because
Okay.
something I find there's a lot of conversation about women devaluing themselves,
Mm-hmm.
but with men, like I think like I would not want to be with someone that is not careful about the time they spend with other people.
Ah.
To me, it makes me really question your judgment,
Mm.
not necessarily your value as a person. Because
Yeah, not the
again, I,
value as a
I
person.
I get that. I feel like that gets dicey, but it makes me question your judgment. Like
Mm.
for instance, like a man or a woman that is everywhere with everybody. It's like, okay, like you don't value your time.
Mm.
You're hanging out with potentially toxic individuals that could bring harm or ruin to you in a multitude of ways, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. like we were talking about previously, like the experience, at least for women, of coupling, of relationship for thousands of years is an intensely emotional experience that is deeply tied to our survival. Like
Yeah.
what it means to live with someone as a woman, according to our psychological imprinting, means
Yes.
like these are my people that keep me alive.
Exactly.
You cannot escape from that. Even if you ignore the psychological aspect of it, like there's an archetypal, like there's a narrative that's like very like it's a very refined kind of powder that gets sprinkled through like our conversation, our culture, everything.
Mm.
And that's thousands of years old. It's like
Yeah.
so talked about. It's like we said, like it's very
Natural
really
law.
steeped in our subconscious. You can't escape
Mm.
from it.
And we can't escape from our masculine and feminine experiencing ways, because what I really hear all the time in my DMs is the woman is experiencing this girlfriend phase
Mm,
as a stepping stone to marriage.
mm-hmm.
99% of them think I have to go through this girlfriend phase, and that then is my audition and my
Mm.
stepping stone to marriage.
And that's how
Where
they stay there for like 10, like yesterday was it 10 years you said, one
10 years,
woman?
ages 20 to 30.
Mm.
But the man is not experiencing that way. The man, 99% of the time, experiences she has agreed to be my girlfriend, my
Yeah.
live in, my, doing wife things
Companion?
without wife thing. And why would that want to change? I asked her. She said, yes, I'm good.
She's okay with
So
it.
the
If she's okay
female,
with it, then fine, right?
so
But
he
yeah.
takes that at its value. She's okay to be my girlfriend. I'm cool with this for 20 years. She
Mm-hmm.
thinks I'm doing this because that will get me to being a wife. And there's no
Leia's
congruence
face.
between their thought. They've never spoken
Mm.
those unspoken things. And again, even otherwise very well raised, trying to do their best kids in their
Kids.
20s. You
Yeah.
kids. I can say kids. I'm old.
You can
Um,
because you've
yeah,
been married 33 years.
they're kids. They really, when they are in congruency with each other, and
Mm.
there are some that were, I would dare say my nephew was, it was, well, we have to live together so we know that we can hit that next level together. They have
Mm.
both bought the lie. That is the way smaller percentage, by the way, of people I see. But they have
Mhm.
both bought the lie that this is a necessary intermediate step between
Mm.
meeting each other and then getting to that level of a marriage covenant.
Right.
So I think we're dealing with disputing two different things. One, that it's necessary to be a girlfriend slash live-in slash, no wife name, but wife benefits in order to get to
Mm.
marriage. That's probably the biggest one we have to. But number two is this almost dichotomous difference between what men and women think being
Yeah.
a girlfriend means.
Mm-hmm.
To a
They
woman,
think
she's
differently,
thinking,
yeah.
yes, we think differently, because I know some other very good men in the masculine space. And they are all about, I would never propose marriage to a woman without living with her. That to
Mm.
me is a necessary step, that I know she's on my program, that she's going to have the right energy, blah, blah. And I know these men are coming from a good spot, but they have bought this lie. And
Yeah.
I want us, and again, I like to let men speak to the men to some extent. And I think there are some good older men out there who are, but I think we need to mention that women and men are coming at this wrong definition
Mm.
from two different places. I asked her a question. She said, yes, this is how we're going to go on until whenever. And the woman, well, I only said yes because I want to be a wife. And I think this is what I have to do to be a wife.
Yeah.
So we got two, like many things between men and women. We're
Yeah.
trying to raise the consciousness enough to see what it means to
Mm.
each of them so that each
Mm.
can get some insight
Yeah.
into how
Right.
the other is thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's purposely no dialoguing when we're in that exchange of those, like Leah was saying, these millions of years of who we are as men and women, male and female. We know, like, this is how I describe it. There's some sort of like homing device between men and women. Like, this feels rightful in a way, meaning it feels congruent to who I am as a man and you are as a woman. However, it tends to bypass that we are also living souls, individual souls, right? Which animals, like I always say, in the animal kingdom, there's courtship there, there's mating there, but they are perfect in their instinct. We're not. We don't go only by instinct. We have character. We have soul value. We have soul essence. So, yeah, Leah, you were wanted to add to what Carla was saying?
Well, I mean, I was
Mhm.
just like very much so agreeing with her. It's
Mhm.
that's exactly it. It's again, it's like this whole thing of that's not the
Mm.
rule. That's the
That's the
exception.
exception.
Sometimes
Yes.
people make it out of that. But I really think that there has to be some conversation around again. It's like you grow into marriage, you
Mm.
grow into all of these things. Like to
Mm.
put yourself in a position as a woman where you're on test drive.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good reference.
That
Test
is
driving.
disgusting, like horrible, like that. When you put it in those terms, because I guess I would ask a woman if
Mm.
you knew that the man that you're with right now, that you're his girlfriend, that you would never get married, would you be living with him?
Ah,
Very few of them are going to say yes.
Right.
very
Very
Like,
few.
few.
come on.
Very
Like,
few.
come
Sliver.
on. But again,
Wow,
it's
yeah,
that
that's
it's that
true.
it's that whole thing of like men are adventure seekers and they have not had that evolutionary need for bonding for survival. So
Yeah.
survival is psychologically emotional for women.
Mm.
It's emotional and it's sexual, and I don't use that in like a
Not
sexy
in the
way. I
erotic
mean that
sense, yeah.
yes, exactly. It is like felt like
It's
in
a
us,
felt sense.
and
Yes.
it's something that I think erotic's a perfect word because I when I think of the word erotic, I actually think of wordless. It
Mhm.
is it's fantasy.
Mm.
It is uh it's theatrical, it's like behind the scenes, it's fun,
Mm.
but it's
Yeah.
quiet and it's subtle, like very
Yeah.
subtle. And
Yeah.
so community is this quiet thing. Like you don't have to like every time you were in the tribe go to the other woman in the tribe and say, "Hello, my friend who helps me um raise my children." Like that it's
Yeah.
unspoken, it's
It's
subtle.
unspoken.
It's
Yeah.
unspoken, it's subtle, and it's felt. It's a literal feeling. It's that feeling when you're with your friends and you feel like warm in your heart and like
Mm.
safe.
It's a felt sense.
Exactly. And for
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why the
women, it's
that's
not the
why the
same.
extended audition doesn't work, because you're
No.
never
Mm.
allowed to rest into that sense with the man who you're
Yeah.
then with
Uh,
in a bodily, intimate, emotional way. But there is a part of you that will never be able to relax because you're
mhm.
still auditioning
Yeah.
and you don't know
Mm.
what the outcome is. You're hoping, but if you don't know, and that's why living that way for such a long time is one of the best indicators of, even if you do get married, being divorced later.
Yes.
that
Mm.
that's that's been the case
Mm.
forever since they've been doing statistics.
Yes.
If these guys in the masculine space say living together is so great and I'd never do it. Why, over the last 40 years, have the divorce statistics for people who live together before marriage continued to be 3 times, 4 times the amount for people who do not live together before marriage? It should have gotten better, shouldn't it? We all know
because
more.
you were testing it. You were testing it, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't. So
No.
the scientific, the experiential evidence has borne out that that doesn't happen. So why are we still insisting it's a good idea to do?
Right.
And that's an interesting question. I think Angel had a question. She said, "Great point, Carla. My question to you ladies would be, how do women evolve from the courtship stage to marriage without getting caught in," I think your word was auditioning, ladies, playing wife without a title. So I love this question. I'd love to know what you ladies like first, have to say to this, right? Great question, Angel. Brittany, love that. Who wants to go first?
Go ahead,
Carla.
Leah.
Oh, Leah.
Leah?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm okay with either one of you. Like, go
Go
for
on
it.
your end, Leah, what you think, because you're
Yeah,
in that
Leah.
age group.
Okay, yeah. So it kind of looks like you having your own life. Like I believe, let me call it in the stage of playing the wife without
A
a
title.
title. Yeah, you have a life. Like, and
Mm.
when you're dating, or I don't want to use the word dating for like this conversation, but when you're
Yeah.
speaking to multiple people, it's like, again, that like emotional like attachment, really what it is. Like when you're auditioning, it's not happening in the same way. Like you're a lot more level-headed in your ability to evaluate people and see them for who they are and maintain a strong inner core about what feels good for you. And ideally, you're still living your own life. You're still doing things that pour into you as your own woman, and from that place of strengthening your inner core and being able to self-reference after these interactions, come into an understanding of these people from a very pure place, and you kind of like you have a relationship with yourself. And what women complain about so much when they're in this girlfriend stage is like, I lost myself, I don't know who I am anymore. And it's like, yeah, like, I mean, because ideally it's like when you're married, like you become one. But that's not like something it becomes very confusing when you're a girlfriend. So when you're courting, you're living your own life. You're not auditioning, you're
Yeah.
observing. You're referencing within yourself and talking to God and having conversations about the people, about the men that are coming and are courting you. It's an evaluated thing for you, because I mean, he should be doing really similar things of being observant.
Right.
Well,
Exactly.
that's kind of my experience having a 30-year-old son who knew he started looking for a woman at about age 24. He knew he wanted to be married and have children. His goal was before 30. And
Nice.
my son's as gregarious as his mother. He's a chatty guy. He would meet women pumping gas. He would, be out and about doing his thing. And he'd meet all these women, and he would always have a couple, dates, experiences with them. But by the second or third date, one of the questions he would ask was, do you see yourself dating for marriage? He's like, maybe even not me, but do you see dating as something you want to head to marriage? And I will tell you resoundingly, all the mid-20 somethings he said, no, I'm not getting married till I'm 35.
Oh, interesting.
No, I just want to have fun. Oh, no, I have a career and an education. So here you have a young man who had a job and could support a family. He was done with his education. And until he went that extra level and went on religious dating service, where he pre-qualified the women he could then talk to know that that was something they were interested in. He kind of felt like he kind of wasted a couple years because that was his question.
Yeah.
It was, are you ready for a courtship? Not tomorrow, but is that, and very few of them are ready. So we have to get, obviously, men's headspace right, but women's headspace right.
Yes.
If you're being asked by a man that's his interest, like, maybe you better think about it if you're 25. Maybe you better not go, oh no, I'm not getting married till I'm 35. We're doing
And they say it
something
very
wrong.
unconsciously. They give that response very like Leah was saying, it's like not really from their bodies, but from the mind,
Right, right,
right?
right, right, right.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, it's like, for me, again, it's a question of, do you value your time
Do
or
you
not?
value? Yes,
Because
exactly.
forget, like, oh, like, if you're past a certain age, you can't. It's literally like, why would you want to emotionally invest in a relationship that you and I both know is going to dissolve, potentially in a terrible way? Like, you're putting your heart, you're putting your neck.
Because they think there's no option. They think it's a necessary
They think
step
it's
to
the
getting to
right.
marriage.
And
They
again, it's
don't know
the
there's another way.
If they only knew that chemically it lasts for only 16
Yeah.
months, which is the typical length of time of a boyfriend and girlfriend relationship these days, like there's ladies, like there's all like if you want to be like, show me the science, that's the science.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh my goodness. So ladies, so a question that's coming in is like, how do young people begin like this courting, seeing I think I shared some chats that the three of us had, like even the generation of our mothers, not my mother, okay, caveat there, but like there's like, why are you talking to three different men on the phone, or like why are you messaging like three different men on like I don't know if people use Facebook, right? But basically that's kind of like the connotation that you should only be entertaining one suitor. But isn't that against kind of like how it has been like in historically to our cellular memory, if I'm to use that word, right? Like, what do you ladies think about that?
So I have had some, I have a lot of friends who, as traditional religious people, send their children to smaller traditional colleges. And that college experience is very much conducive to what I experienced back in the earlier 80s.
Yeah.
And that most people are saying college is nothing like that now at any of the big colleges, but these are smaller religious-based colleges where men and women are doing things in groups all the time, experiencing fun activities, outdoor activities, indoor activities, plays, culture. Smaller groups break off into interest areas, and then you end up with this smaller group. You might very well be if you're interested in a thing, in a group where you are indeed talking to multiple people of the opposite sex and trying to see. That's not considered a bad thing. That's considered, this is what this time is for. And you might end up going to dinner with one of them and then come back and go back into the group together. You might go out with another one of them, and then things stay the same until maybe 6 months later when or the next year when you're a junior now instead of a freshman. It's so you have this large group where, again, the norms are very different than the conventional culture. Very different. They are almost in an artificial hothouse that can kind of take an 18 to 22-year-old and put them in their experience. Can I tell you the amount of marriages that have come out of that and how happy these young people are? They don't
and healthy marriages,
healthy. They're
healthy
not
marriages.
upset. they're thrilled that they're married and they're having babies in their 20s and they love it and they're full of joy. And he's got, again, like you talked about, Leah, about how for women, the emotional and the sexual experience of the bonding in relationship, how that's kind of our main thing in life. But a 25-year-old man, it's kind of interesting. It is super important to him and it is a beautiful, critical part of his life. But in a way, when a 25-year-old man has that locked down, he can lock it down, put it over here, and now it's going to turbocharge him to go make a life and kill it in his career and go get his goals to support that woman and those babies. A, because he doesn't have a choice, but B, he's also not wasting and scattering his energy over on, I'm playing the game with this one. I've got my game, I got my, you all know the red pill game they all talk about and all that. Like, that's done. He's got his woman, he's got his babies, and now it's time to concentrate on his dreams, his goals, and that.
Legacy.
Yes, and that woman is his fuel and his muse and his inspiration. And it is again, we see these men now, right? These older guys in, let's say, the Instagram space who are now talking to the younger guys. They all got married before they were rich and had
shout out to Ryan, Wisdom of Kings.
Thank you. Exactly.
My brother.
He talks about that, like that woman, and the late great Kevin Samuel said it. That woman is your rocket fuel. Why don't you want that in your 20s and in your 30s? These guys who go, no, I got to be up here and be that millionaire at age 45. And that, like, that's not how it works. I know there's some evolutionary thing behind that. The older man, the younger woman. I like you, Martine, think polarity wise, that can be a real nice thing in the proper
very
order.
Nuanced, I want to say, because I have great polarity with my husband who is a year younger. But the thing is, when we were in similar, so you mentioned kind of like the very intentional circles, mixing men and women kind of like together, we had that. We went on like the group dates and whatnot. But he was I guess because of how he was raised as well by his mom and dad, which is a huge factor. Like Leah was saying she observed her own parentage, and you observed kind of like your own kind of like dynamics within the family. And I feel like if he didn't have that background or that history in his family where it was very traditional. I mean, the word right now is traditional, but I like to call it like polarized, where the masculine occupied the provider role and then the feminine occupies kind of like that descent into him, which is what the two of us have. Then it would be different. I would literally just go by his age, but he didn't have that quality. He had the quality where when I started to see him as a person, basically I started to see him as a person I could follow the lead of.
Right.
And that's why I say like there's age polarity, instead of chronological.
Only a year and a half older than me, one year older in school. And he had the opposite dynamic. He came from a really difficult background, very, very dysfunctional, very poor. And he had to mature very quickly.
Yes.
He saw that, said, I'm not doing that. I want better. I want different. He was the first person in his family to ever graduate from college, much less graduate school.
Wow.
His parents didn't know he was leaving for college. He sent in all his own, he did everything. He filled out the FAFSA and threw it in his parents and made him sign it.
He had his hero's journey, right?
He did. Yeah. And that was before I even entered the picture, to the point where I've said more than once, he stood out, even though he was the same age, as a men among boys.
Yes.
Exactly how I feel about mine. Yeah. Men among boys, exactly.
It was obvious. So women don't, and you can maybe talk about, Leah, about how we could do, well, first of all, COVID 2 years ago ruined people getting together. And I think we're having a hard time getting that Gen Z people back together into those groups. and into those situations where you can have better dynamics. That's number one. But number
Yes.
two, hookup culture has also ruined that
Mm-hmm.
because it, so we've got to get back to that where young men and women can experience each other. Now, I will say, like, my 23-year-old daughter is done with college. She's in her first job in a different city out west. And she has been very intentional about joining groups of young people that meet in person. She is in a rock climbing gym. She
Mm.
goes, I believe there's another, kickball. They play, it's a beautiful outdoorsy play. She like is on a kickball team. And she purposefully hooks up with people who are in the medical field who've just moved in because they're all from
Yeah.
different places and have moved in there. So she
Nice.
really tries very hard. She's like, she, unlike my son who had to go online, even though he's meeting people all around to find the woman he wanted to date. She says, I want to experience someone in person
Yeah.
before I
Yeah.
decide
Yeah.
if that's someone I want to deal with. And that's great too. People are different that way. And again, maybe my son, by the time he was in his late 20s, a little different than my 23-year-old. But like younger people who are marriage minded need to get together. I think, Martine,
Physically.
physically and maybe even with like-minded people. I am trying to be more intentional with talking about friends of mine. Hey, don't you have boys who are my girl's age? Don't we have girls who
I'm
are my?
I'm doing that
We
in my
should get them
Telegram group.
together.
In my Telegram group, and some of the ladies are here in my Telegram group because I was asking questions yesterday, and they're like, "Martine, are you going to become a matchmaker?" And I'm like, "You know what? It's kind of fun to introduce godly men to godly women." So like I'm not offering it as a service, but it's more of like we have a responsibility as like older women to kind of like if there's guys, quality men who are marriage minded, then of course I'm going to talk about them to my lady friends who are also unlearning all of this kind of like ideology about, like finding myself and like losing myself and all of those things and connecting them so that, this is not going to like end up in a marriage, or anything like that, but just opening up kind of like this very natural, organic way of meeting like minded members of the opposite sex, like I'd love to facilitate that, Leah, how about
Exactly.
you?
And my
Yeah.
children have said in the past, like, oh, mom, stay out of it. Now they're like, actually,
Mom.
I talked to someone you maybe did that. Like maybe, yeah, that would be okay because they see
Yeah,
how hard it is
it
to meet
is.
quality
Yeah.
people again in a big city outside of, again, if you have a religious tradition that helps to some extent. Although again, once you kind of grow past that college age and when you're coming to all the things with your family and you like my daughter who's now moved and is not coming to our church with us anymore, she's got to do her own. So it's just it's hard. I feel for these Gen Zs. I
Mm,
feel for these 20 somethings. This is not easy, but it is happening. Don't let the traditional media and the social media tell you that this is not happening. There
Yes.
are people meeting other good people and they are having happy marriages. It really
yeah,
is. It can't. And don't just feel energetically that having that expectation and that attitude is a big part?
It
it
is.
is.
I was gonna say because that's such a good like kind of lead in to what I was thinking.
Go
Being
ahead, Leah.
being interested in people is
Yes.
not. It's a huge problem in our generation. Not because we're selfish, but because we're literally scared, and
Of being rejected.
we are well that we're force fed
Mm-hmm.
fear. We don't know how to
Exactly.
handle. Again, like I said, like I speak about emotion as a penetrative experience, and again, I don't use that word like to be like salacious. I use that word like deliberately. It's something you
Yes.
literally have to hold in your body, and we
Mm.
we hate uh people. We we hate people that disagree with us. We are suspicious of people that are different. We are very like guarded. Our generation is
We're protective, right? We
very
don't want to.
I don't I don't know like what the right word is to use, but we're very weird
What
with
feel like? What
yeah.
does it feel like? Yeah.
It yeah, exactly. It feels like when you're speaking with people that they are analyzing you instead of they're looking for where you're wrong. And it's a very like we have a very self-critical culture. Like our generation is very
Yes.
self-critical. And so because like most of our generation has not done that inner work, that shadow work. I mean, and there's more access to it now than ever, but I find that a lot of even very well-meaning spaces center their conversation around talking about what other people are doing wrong rather than how you're
Yes.
experiencing them and how we can actually be in relationship with one another. Because talking
Mm.
about what people are doing wrong and trying to understand them so that you can relate to them is a
Yeah.
completely different thing. Um, and relationship is like the interesting thing because I hear that word and I think like you cannot have a relationship with someone without relating to them in some way.
Yes.
Current dialogue is like, oh, we had a relationship, but he's horrible.
Hmm.
You related to him, babe.
Yeah, exactly.
Some
Like it
parts
or not,
some
like it
parts
or
you
not, you need
related to him. And you may
exactly.
have fallen out of relationship with some aspect of him, which caused the
Mhm.
relationship to dissolve. But you
Mhm.
related to him. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear of self, fear of our own depravity, which is something
Mhm.
that is a human thing. There's a lot of projection of that rejection of self onto others. So
Mhm.
we get into spaces with others and we're
Yeah.
immediately looking for what's wrong with them. We're immediately
Yeah.
looking
It's
and
almost
comparing.
automatic.
It's
Yeah.
trauma. It's like it's reactive, deeply in bed trauma and fear of yourself, fear of people, and I would add a inability to trust yourself because something like I'm so grateful for is like my parents and I we would debate and I went to a school where we like debated a lot and I had very contrasting views to people and I learned like oh like I can trust myself with these big emotions in my body and still like be grounded and stay interested in the person in front of me.
Mm. Yeah.
Like you a person with your own story and reasoning for
Yeah.
why you and how you arrived at the ideas and beliefs that you have.
Yeah.
Again, that's just not something
Exactly.
that is almost I would say it's not even tolerated within our generation.
Yeah.
Right. You just get canceled.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. It's easier to cancel somebody than to kind of like face what is this person kind of like mirroring to me
Yeah,
that I don't like about myself. But in marriage, you give yourself as a whole person. So if
yeah,
you're hating a part of yourself and then you say you want marriage, like girl, do you know what you're asking for? Because I think like Leah, what you were saying, like I love like the femininity space. Like I love it absolutely 100%, but there's just sometimes some content that it's very subtle, but it plays to the wounds of feminine women,
mhm,
thinking that it's helpful, but really inviting them into this unconscious shame that hasn't been healed. And then
mhm,
you see women like, but I feel so like, I want to get married. I want to have kids, but it's because this other woman looks so happy because she's married and she
mhm,
has kids. So I always like invite them to say, well, are you desiring that because a part of you is envying the woman with all the kids and the years of marriage? Or are you willing to look within yourself and kind of like receive all those parts of yourself, be compassionate for yourself, and then come into desiring marriage from that wholeness. It's a very different thing than, oh, look at all these women in corporate America being co opted by feminism. And if you're there, you're doing something wrong. Like you're
You're
playing into,
horrible.
right? And it's like, wait a minute, like, hello, like Leah is an investigator, but she's like very whole in her being,
I'm a
able to stay.
lawyer.
You're a lawyer, right? I
Yeah.
was a I was a teacher in school. Like
Okay.
it's
What are,
not about the job
it's
that you
not.
hold
It
or the
really is
image,
not.
right? So I think we need to do another live stream about that
Yeah.
because we have one more question that I want to
Okay.
get into
One more. Yeah,
before.
I saw this
And
one.
Stephanie has a really good question. Somebody asked me to be his girlfriend. How do I respond knowing I don't want to be one? Ladies, like this is a courtship question. This is really, really juicy. What are your thoughts? How would she respond to that?
I mean, I feel like most people or most men, when they ask that question, they're doing what they think like you want them to do. I don't even
Mm,
think it's like really a conscious thing. It's just like, oh, like I guess this is the next thing, and I guess this is what, like I said, like we're supposed to do. This is what will make her happy.
mm.
If he's really a guy that is, you know, worth a can of paint in terms of even considering marriage, like down the line, you telling him like, oh, that's very like sweet, I appreciate that, I'm very flattered, I'm actually not interested in being a girlfriend and I'm dating for marriage, but I would love to continue seeing you and getting to know you. He will say, like, he's not gonna run
Mwah.
away if he really is interested in you and he wants to get to know you. Like, it's very simple. Like,
Mm.
a lot of like in the femininity space, like there's a lot of overcomplication of like how to communicate things. Like if a guy, like I said, is worth anything and he really actually is interested in you genuinely, he's gonna be like, okay, well, she's not like making me her husband. And that's another thing. It's like within this whole like girlfriend thing, it gets really like screwy, not just for the woman but for the man, when he
It
feels like,
confuses him.
okay,
Yeah.
now I have to,
Yes.
like, what does this mean for me? Like, it's confusing. And for men, I feel like they kind of need that, like, knowing that you are an entity, all, like, you're not like waiting for, oh, please, like, please pick
Please
me,
make
like,
me
come
your
on,
girlfriend.
please. Like, it's
Yeah,
not.
Leah and I hate that term. We're not pick me's. We're I choose, right?
Yeah. It's like, it's
Lovely.
not attractive. It's like that video
Yeah.
that you posted, Martine, of like that like female lion like
The lioness
tossing
auditioning.
herself in front of the male, and he's like looking at her
He's
like,
like,
girl, get up. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is weird. Like,
I love that video.
Well,
you
the
know,
interesting, first of all, I love that simplicity, Leah, because
I love it, Leah. Thank
isn't
you.
that what we need is more simplicity and
Mm.
honesty that's going to give, again, that certain energy. So I guess that what I'd ask Stephanie, or again, to say to any other woman, is when this comes up, have you known this guy for 2 weeks or 2 months? Or are you
Mm.
talking 6, 7, 8 months now? You've been talking, seeing, doing things. Because at 2 weeks, no one should be asking you to be their girlfriend in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's just, we should not
that's
do that.
vicious also.
That's
Yes.
just silliness. And now 2 months, 2 months is maybe the time you talk about, is this someone you'd like to really be thinking about pursuing a formal courtship with?
Yes,
I
exactly.
knew with my husband after 2 months that
Mm.
that was the guy I wanted. And he very quickly reciprocated that. And but that's the thing, because when I made that was my intention, there were a lot of guys at the college who I knew from my previous neighborhood There were a
Mhm.
couple other ones, again, that I was exchanging letters with because they had gone to other places.
Oh,
But we were
letters.
about,
I know.
right? Back
I
in the
love that.
day, letters.
I used to
We
write
would
letters.
write
My husband would
letters.
write letters to me too, like, but this was like in the early 2000s. So
Yeah,
like, I wish.
my husband worked every summer we were in college together, like 12 hours away. And that's kind of
Mm,
funny too, because women wouldn't, I posted about that today, women wouldn't put up with that today. He's not here all summer to have fun with me. What good is he? He had a purpose, he had a plan, and
yeah,
he needed to go do that. And we were both in sync, and that was what we were doing. So,
exactly.
but so if you're past that if it becomes clear that that man wants to be more to you
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that he is pursuing that provider role for
Yeah,
you, he will he will take that simple question that
Mhm.
you said, or that statement. I'm
Mhm.
really not interested in being for anyone's girlfriend. I'm interested in courtship. And at this point, he will go back and he will think about that. And if
Yes.
he's at the point he's serious, you'll know real fast,
Yeah.
is
yeah.
what I'm saying.
They won't
If
waste time.
they really won't, because
Mhm.
so I guess that's the background we don't know for that question. Is this just
Yeah.
that we've been hanging out? Now I guess the next step is you're my girlfriend, or wait a second, this is getting serious. I guess my next step is to ask you to be a girlfriend. No, I'm not going to do that.
Mm-mm.
I'm not. Well, you know what then? Like, this has been X number of months. I feel a way about you and I have a plan and I want more. Are you on board? You're going to
Mhm.
get instant clarity
Yes,
from by being very simple like you were, Leah.
Yeah.
That's the
I
thing.
love that.
It's
And
I'm
it,
gonna
I'm
have
ready to do
my
that.
I'm gonna have my team just take a snippet of that script and send it to my email list because it's like it just gets to be so simple. And like you said, Carla, it takes about like 2 or 3 months for you to, constantly talking and communicating and going coffee with a man to know that, this guy is like husband material. Like, it doesn't have to take like 700 years of like of that, right?
yeah.
So, you know what I mean? So Stephanie says exactly. Asking me to be his GF was the natural step, simply because that's the narrative playing
Right.
out.
Right.
However, we don't like live by narratives. We are self-sovereign human beings. So I just want to
Right.
flash
Oh,
the quote that Leah said. It kind of like sums up what we were talking about today. Strengthen your inner core and be able to
yeah.
live your own life, have a relationship with yourself, and like what Carla was saying, I'm gonna put that out. Like, don't audition. Like, don't
Mhm.
audition for men because, like, when we're auditioning, what we're doing is we're kind of like like that lioness dancing in front of the lion. Like, look at me, look at me, look at me.
Yes.
Instead of like just really embodying our innate femininity, right?
Mhm.
And that confidence that, I'm my own person. I don't have to
Yeah.
like display kind of like what I think men want me to do because
Mhm.
I am so much in self ownership of who I am,
Yeah.
right? So I think that is really beautiful in a woman.
Definitely.
So, ladies, I want to thank you for just this really juicy conversation. This is going to live inside my YouTube, and I'd love to have you back again because there were just some topics here. I was writing notes. I'm like, this is great to talk about. This is great to. So, I just want to honor you for sharing your gifts, Carla, for your lived wisdom. 33 years, 11 children. Ladies, like, come on. Is this
Still
not a
like
Yeah.
Titus?
still like the guy.
And you still, she was, I'm not going to say anything, but this
From our
woman,
weekends? Are we talking
she,
about our
we're
weekends?
talking about like sex weekends, right? Like, if you want to stay married for 33
3
years,
years.
you will schedule sex weekends with your husband. That's all we got to say.
Okay, that's a new one. That's
That's a new one.
that's a live stream on its own. That
That's
one
a no
might have an
live
age.
stream.
That might have an age warning on it.
I know. Leah, your ability to not just assimilate wisdom, but you just have a grace and a gift for, like, the gift of our humanity. And I love and just see this emanating from you. Your feminine radiance is, oh my gosh, like I don't have, I always tell my friends, like, when words escape me,
Mm.
it's because it's just I'm seeing like a lived embodiment like of the feminine, and that's what you are to me. So Leah, thank you for being here, for your gift and your wisdom. She is in that generation, you guys, of like women who are just playing games, but she's not playing the game. She is embodying the wisdom of ages. So my darling, my love, Leah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, ladies, for being with us. Stephanie, Julia, Iberia, Angel, all of the other people on the chat. Liliana, I can't like see everybody, but thank you so much for your time. And I am sure we will see you soon again. Bye, loves, and take
Bye,
care.
gals. Bye.
Bye.